I'm Fatheree.
This is Dave.
This is Brian.
I'm Holly.
And this is Tex-Trek.
Engage.
So welcome back to the Starship Texas for the 56th installment of the Tex-Trek podcast. And tonight we will be talking about Star Trek Discovery Season 2, Episode 4, An OBOL for Charon.
What's an obol?
That's the Greco-Roman coin that you place in the eyes of the dead.
Badass.
According to Google.
Okay. I was about to say, you are really smart.
But
That's actually, well, I'm sure we'll talk about it more, but I just rewatched the episode, and I guess I did not immediately see the what the reference would be. But we'll get there.
We will get into that.
We'll get there.
And the episode was written by Alan McElroy and Andrew Colville, based on a story by Jordan Nardino and Gretchen J. Berg and Aaron Harberts, and directed by Lee Rose. We're just going to all give a brief opening statement and just talk about a very general spoiler-free impression that we got from the episode. And I'll start things off. You know, I think that this episode makes it really clear that Star Trek Discovery can be undeniably recognizable as Star Trek and still be the modern prestige format, serialized drama that they're clearly going for. And kind of like how the episode 2 weeks ago, New Eden, showed that Star Trek Discovery can do the very traditional Star Trek stories, I got a lot of those same vibes here, but I also felt that this maintains a lot of that unique Star Trek Discovery identity. And I'm very happy with this episode, despite having a few issues with things that came up towards the end of this episode, which I will get to. But overall, I'm very happy with this and happy with the direction the show is going into.
Interesting. You stole my comment, first of all.
What comment?
No, I had the same thoughts, and I made a few notes. I was just checking
Damn
to
it,
see...
stop agreeing with me.
I know.
We need a diversity of opinions.
You're full of shit, Father.
Infinite diversity and infinite combinations.
This is the episode where I swore off it, and I swore onto the Orville. No, but your thoughts about it being both containing both the standalone quality episode and the serial form storytelling, that was something I definitely noticed and made note of while I was watching it. I liked seeing number one from Pike's crew, even though it was essentially just a cameo. I was not sure if I was going to like where the episode was going early on, because I think a sphere in space is not super interesting in and of itself. But by the end of it, there had been all this very emotional interaction between the characters that I was into. I'm still processing a little bit of that, but I think that was the big takeaway for me was that there was a lot of kind of big friendship and bonding moments between the characters, whether it was Saru and Burnham, or Stamets and Tilly, and even Jet Reno. So anyway, that's my general thoughts. I'm going to say I like the episode.
But you hate spheres, it sounds like.
I do hate spheres. In general, when they show up in a movie...
Sphere?
He's into cubes. It's all about the Borg.
Oh, he
right.
needs a Borg episode.
Yes.
I also will accept the cylinders in the whale probe thing. What about y'all?
Tetrahedrons all the way.
Okay, fair enough. Moving on. No. What were your thoughts on the episode?
I guess I don't know. Maybe it was just I was in the wrong mood when I saw it, but I had trouble getting emotionally connected to these scenes that are clearly supposed to be emotionally moving, and I'm normally a big sucker for those. So it might just be me, because apparently you found them quite moving, and I was intellectually, I couldn't tell what was wrong, why it wasn't quite clicking for me.
I actually think that's a fair point, and I will say this: I kind of felt that way the first time I saw it, and then I watched it again just before this. And I think I fell more into it, and honestly, that's been a little bit of a thing with me on almost every episode of Discovery.
See, I was much more emotionally moved by episodes 1, 2, and 3 than I was on this one, and I'm not sure why, and I can't honestly even say if it was a problem with the episode.
Maybe it'll come out in the discussion of specific scenes. I
love the translator gag. That was amazing. So I can definitely say that on a more technical, fun fun with Star Trek, that was amazing. So, Holly?
I loved it. I thought this episode was really good. I especially love that very poignant scene. We have a very poignant scene with Saru and Michael. Mm-hmm. And I guess I'm not supposed to be giving spoilers now, but I really liked that scene, though I did have issues with one thing in it. But I thought this episode was really good. And I'll say again that one of the things that I really like about Discovery that I don't see in much other TV is that in the characters we still go to all the dark brooding places, and we have dysfunctional families. We have our characters have done some horrible things sometimes, but we have redemption in a way that we learn to live with these things, and kind of I like that because we're not just so cynical. But we don't ignore the darkness and act all cheery either. So that one of the things I really like about Discovery is its ability to go to the dark places with the characters, but give them hope and redemption and have them work together.
Yeah, nice. Good, well done.
You know what strikes me? That Matt Decker famously lost his mind in the Doomsday Machine in the original series. Is the kind of character whose story we might have seen unfold and continue to unfold if he were a Discovery character.
Yeah, I could see that. So they also love their big space monsters.
They do. In this one, we have a Lovecraftian sort of polyp monster creature.
I didn't really think Lovecraft, but yeah, I can kind of see that.
There's a thing that they kind of at least in the RPG lore of it call flying polyps. And that thing looked like them. We're talking about the Chaosium Call of Cthulhu RPG.
Okay, is that where your hatred of spheres in space comes from?
Yes, I'm terrified of them. The truth is, I watched this episode with white knuckles. Dave, fearful that I would be held in an intractable force field, forced to speak different languages, and right before it died.
I hate to break it to you, but your entire world is a big sphere in space.
No, it's not.
He's a flat earther, I guess.
Yes, I'm coming out in this episode as a flat earther.
Yes, taking some interesting paths.
Listen, if you're a Star Trek fan and you're a flat earther, you got some reconciliation to do in your life. You are an expert at what's the cognitive dissonance?
Yeah, if you've seen a lot of ships go into orbit.
That's it.
But we'll just go straight.
Ready for the summary?
We'll go straight into the warp speed summary. So all the spoilers are coming up now. You've been warned.
Punch it.
Make it so.
So this week's adventure starts off with our introduction to Rebecca Romaine's portrayal of Number 1. The first officer of the Enterprise during Pike's tenure. She pays a brief visit to the Discovery. Turns out she has been looking into Spock's investigation. As we learned last week, Spock is a fugitive wanted for murder. Number 1 has uncovered some classified information on Spock's case. Captain Pike now knows the warp signature of the shuttle Spock stole when he escaped the psychiatric ward on Starbase 5. The Discovery proceeds on a high warp pursuit course, but before they get very far, they are pulled out of warp by a massive spherical life form, which keeps the ship trapped in a multi-phasic stasis field. Scans show the sphere is 100,000 years old, and it's giving off some weird vibrations, as in literal vibrations, which the Discovery computer tries to interpret. Their investigation of the sphere gets interesting when all of a sudden the universal translator decides to stop working correctly. Burnham sounds like she is speaking Klingon, Pike is speaking French and German, no one on the bridge can understand each other, until in walks Saru, who sadly is nursing a real mother of a cold, but he is able to restore communication on the bridge thanks to his knowledge of multiple Federation languages. Before long, he and Burnham are able to restore the universal translator on all the decks of the ship, but then Saru's condition begins to worsen. He clearly is way more sick than they thought. Burnham takes Saru to sickbay, where Dr. Pollard has her hands full treating injuries from accidents happening all over the ship. She's not quite sure what is wrong with Saru, but says he is in an incredible amount of pain. His eyes are picking up all kinds of blinding UV light that human eyes can't see. His threat ganglia are enlarged. It all sounds pretty miserable. Saru says he knows what's going on. He is experiencing the Vihari, a biological state that Kelpians enter when it nears their time to be sacrificed to the Ba'ul predator species back on their homeworld of Kaminar. Saru says he can continue his duties and assist with the dilemma of the sphere. At the same time, Stamets and Tilly are in engineering, along with Jet Reno, who apparently has stuck around on the ship. The sphere is now overloading the EPS conduits. Thanks to a supercharged power relay in engineering, Reno, Stamets, and Tilly are trapped behind the doors. They MacGyver a way to address the relay overload. However, during all the chaos, the multi-dimensional fungus life form from last episode escapes from its prison in the spore chamber and reattaches itself to Tilly. Stamets and Reno must keep her quarantined. Too bad they can't get any help as all the comms are down. But Burnham pays a visit to engineering. The clock is ticking, and if the ship doesn't get free soon, they will lose Spock's warp signature, and his shuttle is almost out of sensor range. Burnham wants to help engineering restore power to the shields in hopes that raising the shields will free the ship from the sphere and allow them to continue chasing her foster brother. When she arrives in engineering, she finds Tilly in the spore chamber with the fungus blob attached to her arm. Stamets explains that it would be dangerous to remove the symbiotic life form, but he comes up with an idea to communicate with it. This gives Burnham a big light bulb idea. The sphere is trying to communicate. Stamets and Reno tell her to run with that idea and that they will be taking care of Tilly. Burnham tells her theory to Saru and suggests that the sphere is perhaps trying to initiate a first contact. But it is Saru who figures it out. The life form is trying to make last contact and has come to them to die. He concludes that the ancient life form is dying and that, before it goes, it feels the need to pass on its 100,000 years of experiences. It needed Discovery to record its knowledge before it can die, and Saru has figured out its means of communication after noticing the pattern of the UV light he has seen. And that's the vibrations coming from the sphere, its form of communication. But the information transmitted in the vibrations is so vast that the ship computer can't handle it. This is why the Disco is undergoing ship-wide malfunctions. Saru and Burnham make their way to the bridge and let the captain know what's going on, and that this falls under Discovery's original mission as a science vessel. The ship has shields back, but Saru believes that if they lower the shields, they can receive all the remaining information from the sphere, and it can die knowing it will be remembered. By staying and going along with this, it does put the ship at risk and means Spock's shuttle will leave sensor range. But Pike decides it's worth it. They lower shields, route all available power to communication, and right before the sphere dies in an explosion, it pushes the ship to safety. Its final act was to save them after revealing all of its secrets to the ship's computer. Discovery now has 100,000 years of history for the Federation to study. And as an added bonus, the sphere even happened to have seen where Spock's shuttle was headed, which means the chase is still on. So in engineering, Tilly is pretty spacey and strung out, the symbiote fungus has her acting all trippy, but Stamets and Reno plan to install a cortical implant that allows the alien life form to communicate through Tilly. They proceed with this, and the life form begins to speak through her, and tells Stamets that it is part of a species called the Jawsip, that lives in the mycelial network. It also reveals that his trips through the network have been destructive to them. And it finally states that it has plans for Tilly. The fungal blob on her arm grows and swallows her up, trapping her into a cocoon, but they're able to pull her back out. And after the death of the sphere, Saru asks Burnham to assist him back in his quarters, because he's not going to make it much longer. Once they're in his quarters, he asks her to cut off his gangula and let him die. His time has come and it is inevitable. Burnham is in tears and confesses that Saru is family to her. She attempts to go along with the procedure, but before she can cut the gangula, they fall off on their own. Shortly after, Dr. Pollard lets us know that Saru's vital systems have returned to normal. Saru says he feels great. His constant Kelpian fear is gone, and he feels a power he has never felt before. But it is a bittersweet moment, as Saru now knows that Kelpians can survive the Vihari, meaning the great balance of Kaminar is a lie. Back in engineering, things get really weird and strange as mushroom dust is released, making Stamets and Reno both trip major balls. And Tilly is captured again by the fungus cocoon. Roll credits.
A lot happened in that episode.
Not as much as last week.
No, but it does occur to me that there's a lot of thematics going on. There's stuff going on here about death. There's stuff going on here about the fact that the spore drive was ravaging an ecosystem there. There's a hunt for Spock. There's the communication issues. I feel like maybe part of why I felt a little disconnected from it the first time is that there does seem to be a lot of things at work. Maybe even some overlap, some not themes at odd, but a theme that could sustain a full episode is just a quick bit in this one.
Yeah.
Right, like the universal translator thing.
Yeah.
Right.
When I was watching this the first time, I was kind of thinking, oh, this is going to be kind of like the DS9 episode Babel, where they have a hard time communicating.
Right.
Yeah,
but
I really like the communicator, the translator gimmick, the idea that it malfunctions. It is a great example of taking the technology that's been in our face since the very beginning of the show and doing something that in hindsight seems kind of obvious, right, but nobody's ever done it before. And I really appreciated that cleverness.
Right. We have long, for decades apparently, made assumptions that the universal translator will always be there for us.
Yes. Well, and that when it's off, it's off. When it's on, it's on. The idea that it could be, that it is not necessarily reliable, that it is filtering things, and that how reliable is it, how accurate of a view are we getting of what people said. I also feel strongly that whole part of the episode was just the writers sitting around saying, all the fans keep complaining about the subtitles. We should do an episode where everybody talks in other languages just to screw them. And then they said, hey, how would we do that? And then this happened. I feel like that must be how this started, was a big nephew. But I loved it. It was glorious.
It's weird because last week we had Klingon speaking in English without subtitles. So this week we have the Starfleet characters
speaking in Klingon.
Speaking in Klingon.
Other things.
There's actually some other fictional languages in there. That,
okay. I knew there was
I'll bring up in the Easter eggs.
It's okay.
I think one of the writers is just a linguist themselves, and they're finally, we need a shout out.
Yeah.
We've given enough time to the fungus experts.
I always thought they should do something like that in Doctor Who, because they have the telepathic translators in Doctor Who, right? And I was amused when one of the books revealed that the translators in the Doctor Who's TARDIS filter out all the swear words. So now you can imagine that they're actually swearing a lot in Doctor Who, and the TARDIS is actually altering what they say.
That's awesome.
It's on PG.
So yeah.
What the fork?
Yeah, what the fork. So I quite like this, playing with this in Star Trek as well. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, the idea of the universal translator is that it's like the ultimate plot convenience thing where it's just aliens can speak whatever language and it'll just make you hear it in your native language. But that's such a cool idea to turn that on its head and use it as like a language scrambler.
Yeah.
Whereas you would think two people who can normally speak the same language to each other are going to be hearing a totally wrong language. I thought that was pretty cool, and I'm surprised that it's taken over 700 episodes for anyone to do that.
Yeah.
I almost wondered on a symbolic level, since this whole season is kind of about science and religion, if maybe this was gonna turn out to have been like the Red Angel. It gave me, they even mentioned the Tower of Babel in there, but it gives that whole image of, if you were to read the story of the Tower of Babel, the reason the language is confused is because if the humans could all work together and speak the same language, there'd be nothing that humanity can't do. And so that seems to be a perfect symbolic level of what if that was the Red Angel not wanting everybody to be able to do something.
That would be a great antagonist for Star Trek.
Yeah.
Where so much of the ethos is about unity and coming together to accomplish great things.
Jehovah versus the Federation. One night only.
I'll buy that for $1.
Yeah.
I mean, given their track record, I know who my money's on.
So, yeah, I certainly on a symbolic level, if nothing else. Even if it's not literally the Red Angel, the idea that we keep pulling these motifs, religious motifs, and dropping them in there. This is another example of a religious motif, and one that's very applicable to Star Trek, as you've already pointed out. The ethos of Star Trek is everyone works together.
And speaking of the Red Angel, they touch on it the least in this episode of any of the episodes we've seen this season. But they did go out of their way to include one little scene where they're having a little conference, and they have the image of the Red Angel on a screen. That image has appeared in every episode. One little tidbit that they dropped, I believe it came from Detmer, who was saying that if we can't find any species that matches this description, is it possible that this is a one of a kind?
Right, so they made out that they were checking all like avian species, anything winged.
But I'm wondering what if the Red Angel is just like one entity? It's like one individual creature.
I did ask, given how little of the galaxy that the Federation has explored at this point, that seems like a really big leap to make. It's not like here, if you said that on Earth, where we have actually explored the whole Earth and looked at a vast percentage, significant percentage of the species genomes.
What if the Red Angel is a character that's on the show? Like, what if Jet Reno is the Red Angel?
I loved how Jet just walks in. You know, oh yeah, she's on board, and why would she would never get off the ship. We brought her on board. She's a thing now.
A lot of field promotions.
Yeah. And I loved how they just had no explanation. She's just there.
Well, we can talk characters for a little bit.
Yeah.
We have the dynamic established in this episode that is super entertaining to watch between Stamets and Jet Reno.
They butt heads immediately.
Yeah,
and it makes sense because you have an engineer who's very much a true mechanic gearhead type come onto the ship that has like the weird science mushroom drive.
It's like hippie science going on. Like, but it's like bleeding edge, but it's like borderline like dream world stuff. Yeah. And she's like all about the tried and true, and but can like do just about. She can kind of like work miracles with with
gum,
with gum, duct tape, and
you see her fix something with gum when she was there. Well, she was trying to firewall the critical propulsion systems,
plus some good old fashioned trepanning.
I was going to wonder if this introducing gum into Star Trek was a new thing, but didn't they have some gum in Deep Space Nine, or is that a behind the scenes?
Somewhere in the back of my head, I wondered that too, because I cannot recall any other scenes with gum.
I want to say there was gum in maybe it was just a behind the scenes gag. I remember them talking about whiskey flavored gum in Deep Space Nine, but I think it might have been a behind the scenes thing the production department did, and not something that was in an episode. I don't know.
If someone can remember and message us about that would be
I'm sure
very
Memory
handy.
Alpha has the answer.
Yeah.
But yes.
Somebody just type in gum and Memory Alpha.
Certainly the most important scene gum has ever had in Star Trek.
I would love for Jet Reno to become the chief engineer on Discovery.
She might turn out that she is. We just
no,
way they just bring her in like
she mentions the chief engineer.
Oh, okay. So
right.
And we don't know who that is.
Yeah.
So,
all we know is
not Stamets then.
No.
I mean, he's the one I've been thinking.
He's a specialist.
No.
So the way he was described by one of the writers and producers, Ted Sullivan, was that Stamets is the chief engineer of the Spore Drive. Because there's actually a computer display in season 1 at one point that says Chief Engineer Paul Stamets. Or, something like that.
But it's an oopsie.
And, well, the way that they covered it up was like, well, he's Chief Engineer of the Spore Drive.
Right.
But
well, apparently Pike thinks that the Enterprise's current engineer, that they'll never have anyone more into the ship's engines than he is, or whatever.
So saving that for the Easter eggs. Yeah, we do have Commander Non, the woman Barzan, who was in the first episode of the season. Mm-hmm. She was back on the ship, and I like her uniform. She's wearing a Discovery-style skirt uniform, which kind of bridges the original series designs.
Did you say Discovery-style skirt?
Yeah.
Do they have skirts on Discovery?
They do now with her.
I actually didn't notice that.
I didn't notice that either.
I'm used to them all just wearing the blue and the gold, kind of suit style.
Well, only the command people have gold on there. But
whatever.
Sometimes it's blue and silver, sometimes it's blue and bronze. That reminds me, like, the blue and silver. When I was watching this episode the first time, when they are having, like, that little meeting that Burnham was talking about the Red Angel, and Linus, the Saurian, is there, and I noticed, like, he's a science officer, he has the silver on, and I'm thinking, there's a whole lot of science officers on this ship. And, Stamets, Burnham, Linus.
What are they, some kind of science vessel?
Yeah, and then I remembered that. I was like, oh, yeah, of course.
And it's got a spore drive. Wouldn't you want a bunch of scientists to do, with unique things like that?
Linus's cold, did that have anything to do with Saros?
I don't think so. That was just a little bit of continuity establishing that he sneezed on people. Apparently he has 6 sinuses, and that's why he's an asshole who sneezes on people in the turbo lift.
Real quick, talking about there's a scene where they're all in like a ready room, it looks like. I don't know what it goes by. I forget. But it seems like it's all the department heads early on in the show.
The scene that we're talking
Is
about?
that the one we're talking? Okay. That was another one where I liked because it kind of... We haven't seen that many people all conferring together. I don't know if we've ever seen it on this show, where everybody's kind of thrown in their 2 cents, even if people are really just getting a line or two for the practicality of the show. It had that kind of egalitarian Federation vibe to it, where it's like, Picard would be like, all voices are welcome. That's what that scene kind of brought up to me.
And this episode also introduces us to number 1. We haven't seen in anything since... I guess the menagerie back in the 60s.
Yep. As originally conceived, she was supposed to be sort of a very intelligent ice queen, right? I mean, that was sort of their 60s characterization of her, right?
Yeah, well, she was the proto-Spock. She was going to be the logical, computer mind, emotionless first officer. Before that was ever going to be a thing for Spock.
Oh, did they not have that in mind when they wrote the Cage?
When they wrote like Spock, who like smiles and yells.
Sure, but like even in the once the series got going, there were still little gaps like that. I guess I thought in the episode there was that he was still kind of the logical guy.
No, that was going to be number 1.
Interesting.
Like if they had picked up that pilot, and if the Cage had been like the Star Trek that got made, like the Kirk Spock relationship would have been like the Pike number 1 relationship.
Right.
Although that one would be kind of possibly more interesting, I think, because you kind of have like the sexual tension between them after they kind of like
There's plenty of sexual tension between Kirk and Spock. That's true. It only created a whole genre of fiction.
I'm trying to make it more heteronormative, I guess. But yeah, you're right. No, that was always there from the start.
Yes.
Also, when you say something could be more interesting than the Kirk-Spock friendship, it's iconic. You can't...
That's why I said possibly.
No, not even a chance. Not even a chance. No, but... They
kind
clearly...
of throwing Majel Barrett and Jeffrey Hunter under the bus there with that one.
Yeah. What I was going to say is that they very clearly have somewhat reconceptualized her. What did y'all think?
I like her. I like that she eats habanero sauce on stuff.
Yeah, you're a fiend for... Fatheree is a fiend for hot sauce of all stripes, up to and including, like, ghost peppers and beyond. So yeah, I knew that you would be cheering her on.
Well, and I like that she likes her cheeseburger and fries. I mean, I wish I could be that skinny and eat.
Well, I'm sure it's futuristic, calorie-less, but like tastes just as good as like a fat-laden burger.
When I was watching this for the first time with my girlfriend, we were watching her pour like the hot sauce on her food, and my girlfriend Antonia, she was like, "Oh my god, is she pouring the hot sauce on top of her bun? Like, that's not how you put hot sauce on a burger." But no, she's pouring it on her fries, so she's not a monster. But that was just like...
Maybe she wanted hot sauce in every bite of that burger, so she wanted it spread on the bun, good like mayonnaise.
These are the important details you tune into this podcast
that's how they do
for.
These are important details, though, because this reminded me of the pillar filler of The Next Generation, where they would do like these... just little character moments just thrown in there. Yeah. Just it kind of like pads out the episode, but also it's just Picard is grumpy because he has to go to the Admiral banquet, or something like Geordi doesn't like cats after he babysat Spot for a few days. And, just like there's little character moments, just like where we get to know these people. It just makes them feel more real.
Oh, no, I'm not complaining about the moment. The fact that we're analyzing the application of the hot sauce. I was like, wow, we're really getting into it there.
Yeah, we're zeroing in on a moment. Well, so what I wanted to say about her, though, is she projected to me the same kind of casual confidence that Pike did, which I liked. But you got the sense of why they work so well together, or at least it suggests that history.
They came off as like two friends, two colleagues that have worked together for a long time, have a good working relationship.
And we're both equally concerned about Spock. It's clear that they considered him family in the same way that they, McCoy and Kirk and Spock would have considered each other in the original series.
And I thought it was really good writing, with a little subtle thing, but when Pike asks her, "How is the crew handling this? How are they taking it?" I'm paraphrasing.
Yeah.
But that is a reminder.
That is Spock on the run kind of thing.
Right. Yeah. And that's just a big reminder to us that Pike is temporary. He's going to leave at some point. Like he has his own destiny off on the Enterprise, and it's going to be weird seeing the show without him because we've enjoyed him so much, but they've kind of downplayed him these last two episodes. Something that Dave suggested they might need to do just so he doesn't completely steal the show.
Yeah, I was outright suggesting something is going to need to happen to remove him for some episodes, like have him kidnapped, pulled into the mycelial network, injured, something like that, just because he is a charismatic presence on screen. Are y'all still liking Pike? Or do you?
I do.
Yeah, I think he's great. I think I'll be sad to see him go. Let's put it that way. I don't know if he overshadows the others, but he feels like he works well with them, and it makes for a good team.
Do you think it's part of it is because he brings kind of a classic Trek vibe to the thing, or is it the actor? Or
I think the actor, and I think the fact that kind of that little classic Trek heart kind of recontextualizes everything around it and makes the whole thing feel a little more like the Star Trek we know.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Less dysfunctional of a crew. So
yeah, the idea that weirdly the presence of a stranger might bring the Discovery closer together.
Yeah,
I think you're not wrong about the recontextualization. That's a good way to put it.
Well, and their last captain was a madman from the fascist universe.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, he's a team builder, and I think, as we've said before, and
Lorca?
No, Pike is a team builder.
He was a team builder at gunpoint.
Yeah. Well, it makes sense. Lorca, and nobody trusts anybody, so Lorca doesn't bother with team building.
Right.
His default assumption is everybody's out for themselves, so why bother with it? Whereas, Pike's definitely sees a value in pulling these things together. So a little dab of classic Star Trek thrown in there makes a huge difference in the overall feel of the thing.
So what about the relationships between what Dave was talking about earlier, like the relationships between Burnham and Saru, and how that kind of mirrors what's going on between her and Spock?
I loved that scene and how I really liked when Saru made her promise to work things out with Spock.
Yeah, the deathbed scene.
I did not
Right.
expect that to come up at all in their conversation, but it made a lot of sense based on the conversation that they had and that intense bonding they had.
And the fact that she and Saru had initially also had problems because of her actions, and that she, that they were able to work through and become that close.
Yeah.
So I will get to my one nitpicky thing about that scene, and that is that Saru, of course, will think that he's dying because he comes from a primitive culture where they've not been allowed to develop technology and examine this. But being that Burnham has grown up in this Federation and on Vulcan and stuff, I would have liked to have had her not just, okay, I'll assist you with the suicide on the death that you know is coming, not because of assisted suicide, not that, but because it seems like that a doctor should have come in that room and been examining and really saying, okay, this is,
They just took it as a given that his long-standing tradition was a truth.
And that you're going to die a painful death. And I was like, oh, no. You don't have to die a painful death. They can give you morphine and Ativan for that.
We don't know Kelpian biology.
I would have liked for her to bring the doctor in and examine this. And then if okay, the doctor pronounces, okay, yeah, you're really going to die and it's going to be painful and there's nothing we can do, or you're really going to die and it's not going to be painful and you're going to be a vegetable, Saru decides, okay, I still would like to have assisted suicide. That'd be different. Dignity. But it feels like to me that when Burnham is from this culture where there is clearly advanced medical technology, that you wouldn't just give up and accept that this is a given, because at no time has a doctor actually diagnosed him as dying. He just believes he is based on his observation with his people, but now that he's in advanced technology land, that they can do something about that.
I feel like it was a story compromise to just sort of move things forward. But yeah, it might have been nice to at least, I want to say, like, they could have thrown out sort of, we don't know, as the only Kelpian we've ever examined, we have medical records on him, but this is something new, and it seems like he's going to be dead before we can really say much more.
We are talking about the same Starfleet that has McCoy being pretty flabbergasted by Spock going into Pon Farr. Those are the Vulcans, the first species humanity interacted with.
Even 100 years later, the emergency medical hologram on Voyager didn't seem to know much about Pon Farr, so that was more Vulcan secrecy.
They are tight-lipped.
Well, yeah, but I'm just saying there's a precedent for the Starfleet medical personnel just having to accept what the aliens say about their cultures.
Did anyone like buy into it and think that he was actually going to die? Because it did kind of manipulate me into
the closer it got to the end. Yes,
I actually thought that he might die, and that then Michael Burnham would have to live with her actions and stuff, because I wouldn't put it past the show to do something like that.
She doesn't need any more guilt.
No, she doesn't. But I
sometimes life doesn't give you what you need.
Yeah.
I wouldn't put it past the show to do something, so I held open the option, especially when she wasn't going to call a doctor, and just go ahead and do it.
Yeah.
And when we have a moment, I would like to talk about a direction I would like to see Saru's character go.
I wanted to say some more about the death.
Where would you like to see him go?
Okay. Well, clearly we have, a critique of the Prime Directive / General Order 1 is that it's, colonialism and imperialism. We recognize that these are bad behaviors that we don't want to repeat. But we don't know how to interact with primitive cultures without repeating our bad habits, so therefore we won't interact with them. So Saru is somebody who is actually from a primitive culture, and I would have liked to see, and we know for continuity reasons that he won't change things, but I would like to see him advocate for the Federation to take a different position toward his people, and to tell us as viewers what it is that we could do to help people that are not as privileged, rather than just say, well, privilege is a bad thing, colonialism is a bad thing, imperialism is a bad thing, and I don't want to do that, so therefore I'm just gonna not share the cures for all these diseases or whatever with you and let you die.
It would be interesting too if he like petitioned the Federation and got the option to what's the Kelpia? Is that what it's called?
Kaminar.
Okay, they didn't name it after the.
Not even close.
Whatever. They had to be a test case of some sort. Now, I think the show probably kind of moves at a quicker pace than that, and I think the bureaucracy of the First Contact, I don't think is something they're really going to get too into. But I agree with you. I think that'd be interesting to see.
But
and
maybe they'll do a novel.
But even as we talk
like
about
place where it would show
intersectionality and allies on other things in society, and you're like, well, I want to be a good ally, but I don't know how with my privilege, and I accidentally say something racist or homophobic or whatever. It just seems to me that this would be an opportunity for somebody to have somebody who didn't come from the privileged culture of society advocate and basically tell us as viewers how to be a good ally to his people by advocating. And then the reactions that the Federation could give would be the same ones that maybe we give when we aren't really listening and we want to think of ourselves as good and etc. Because, I mean, that the Federation is essentially how white liberals tend to react.
Right.
Well, I that's kind of bad. I don't want to be a racist, so therefore I just won't interact with this or deal with this. So that's what I'd like to see for Saru's character. And then the other thing, of course, is that his species seems to have been already being interfered with by another species.
Right.
So then you could get into an interesting legal case of should his culture be considered a pure culture that can't be interfered with, since something else is interfering with his culture.
I think that's going to be the loophole that they use to go and fix things on Kaminar. Because he definitely has motivation now to go and save his people. His whole society is built on a lie that the Kelpians reached this Vahari, which... My big problem with the short trek, Brightest Star, that kind of had his origin story, was that they didn't really define stuff like that. But when I heard that they were going to show his home planet again this season, it kind of made me give them a pass, and I said, okay, well, I'll just hope that they explain it when we get to it then. So we got more of that now, but I think the interpretation of it that I have is that when they get to a certain age, they enter the state of just like, their threat ganglia just go crazy. They just feel like constant like pain and stress and anxiety, and it's like at that time it's like time to die. Mm-hmm. And they don't know that you can like live past that, so they're just getting ate by the Baiul species. Makes me wonder if Saru's father, who is kind of like the guy in charge of their village, makes me wonder if he knows that the great balance is really a lie, but you just have to maintain that structure for their society to continue,
to not get wiped out or something.
Yeah. Well, is it just supposed to be the next stage of their development? That there's some new development that's supposed to come after that in their biological cycle.
Maybe Saru turns into the Red Angel. He goes through like a metamorphosis.
Yeah, there we go.
Evolution usually doesn't work super fast visually, with visible changes. I wonder how long have these guys been doing it that a race developed to accept it biologically.
Well, I think they might have had like a previous evolution where
these
they
aliens
were
are just like, let's take advantage of it.
But
the Baiul.
Where I think the Baiul might be native to Kaminar also, but they're the more advanced species.
Yeah, there's a lot more to say about that.
This is all speculation, but I mean, he clearly has motivation to go back, because if he doesn't do anything, he knows that his sister will be murdered at a untimely point in her life when she could live on and have like a great life like he's having. Yeah. And at this point, like if he doesn't try to do something, then he's kind of the jerk.
Right. I think we're going to see him doing a little bit of Kirk stealing the Enterprise. Now, what were you going to say a few minutes ago?
I did have 2 comments I wanted to say about the sequence on the deathbed. One was that okay, maybe there should have been a doctor there, but the ship is also, like, just crawling out of the crises. Like, wasn't there still people trapped in engineering at that point? So
yeah, I guess that's true. Everything was like a triage style, and they're like, "We'll get around to it."
And there was somebody who had their chest open and bleeding. You know, there. It might just be that everyone's like, "Okay, so there's nothing we can do. Okay, there's nothing we can do. I've got a problem over here. I got to go do."
Maybe a line or two just would have highlighted that.
Yeah. I mean, people always like to play, you know, armchair quarterback and say, well, why did they do this? Why did they do that? When you're in a crisis, it is really hard to think clearly and see the big picture the way you can if you're just sitting in your living room.
I know I feel that way when a giant sphere entraps me in a stasis field.
Yeah,
That's true, which is why I wouldn't have put it past them to let Saru die and have Burnham feel guilt over it, and then wonder later on if she should have called the doctor in that moment, because we don't always think clearly. Even Burnham, who does seem to have a superpower of thinking more clearly in crisis situations,
occasionally pulls a gun on her captain.
That happened one time, but the kind of the whole like malfunctions on the ship and everything. It kind of reminded me of the episode "Disaster."
Oh yes,
on the Next Generation.
Just quickly, the other point I wanted to make about the deathbed was I liked that they don't just say they're friends. He's on his deathbed. He's got his last words. He uses them to try to fix Michael. That is what a friend does.
Oh, yeah.
That was very nice touch of showing, not just telling. So, anyway, but yes,
Did their relationship there, did that feel forced to anyone? Do you feel like they haven't quite earned that at this point? No. They kind of like rushed into that?
A little bit.
It felt real to me, but I also read, the first Discovery novel that came out, which spent a whole lot of time building
Desperate Hours.
So it feels like we've seen extra episodes in a way.
Yeah, so to me, the idea that they have this, we'll never admit we're friends, but we really are. And I read that into all the stuff in season 1, where he's like, well, I hate you. But then later on, he's like, oh, well, yeah, she's the best officer ever, Lorca, you need her, and stuff like that was all going on under the surface, and that it felt exactly like what I expected to see.
Well, after they bonded on that planet that didn't have any conflict that Saru wanted to stay on, which that also is an interesting evolutionary concept. But after they bonded on that planet, I kind of didn't think it was surprising at this point, because I kind of thought that was maybe where they earned this moment.
I definitely felt that the acting on both Sonequa Martin Green and Doug Jones, Doug Jones' part was like so good that it kind of carried me there, even though I did feel it was a little quick to be hitting where they were. But there was like so much emotion in their faces and voices that I kind of had to roll with it.
The execution was strong enough that it won me over.
Yeah.
But he also had that request to have all of his personal logs saved because he wanted them preserved for his people on Kaminar, so that one day they can see that, you know, a Kelpian can go have great Starfleet adventures, or you know, you can have like your own destiny. You don't have to just like die and be.
Did he just want to brag? It's a humble brag.
It was
It's his deathbed. You get to humble brag on your deathbed.
Fair enough.
It was the parallel of what was going on with him with the sphere life form.
Right. That's what allowed him to realize what was going on.
And I think the name of the episode, an OBOL for Charon, is it's either that by Burnham doing that for him, by preserving his personal logs, or by like the ship, you know, recording all this information for the life form. That's like the kind gesture when you put like the coin in the eyes of the dead, or you could also interpret it as that it didn't feel like it could die until like it paid this price of getting its story out there.
Right.
And that idea of like legacy is pretty cool. Like this thing seems pretty epic. It was like 100,000 years old. It's seen some shit in its time. Like,
you know, something else that Saru mentioned that I thought was big thematic wise in that sequence was when he talked about essentially his refugee status, and that he had this empathy for empathy. Of course, is another big theme of the episode, and was highlighted as his like sort of foremost trait. But that he felt empathy for all the other people,
I had a problem with
immigrants that were there. Oh, interesting. But he said that when he heard their stories, it like kind of opened his heart up to more love. And certainly that's a fairly poignant message, certainly for the moment. What was the issue you had?
Like halfway through this episode, because I was loving everything for the first like 25, 26 minutes.
And then your hatred of refugees reared its ugly head?
No, then when Burnham said, and I thought it was just kind of a corny line, but when she said, "Saru, you're the most empathetic soul I've ever known," I thought I've never would have described Saru as the most empathetic ever. Like that's never been brought up. That feels like something that they kind of just dropped on us in this episode.
I can almost buy that maybe it's true, but if you want to say where did they go too far with their relationship, that might be the line that felt like, I don't know if she really would ever say that to him. He didn't have much empathy for Burnham after she went to prison and was a criminal, and he was all pissed off about her being on the ship. He didn't have much empathy for the tardigrade when they were having to torture it to go rescue Captain Lorca. He didn't have much empathy for Burnham when he was all mad about having to leave the Pavins. Like there's I don't really picture him as a super empathetic guy. I'm not saying that like he's just shut off from other people or other people's emotions or anything, but that just felt like a contrivance that they came up with for this episode to explain how he's connected to the sphere life form.
It does, except that this is coming from Burnham, who is also not the most in touch with her feelings. I mean, she does have empathy at times, but this is coming from somebody who doesn't really feel her feelings or acknowledge her feelings. So maybe to her, he is very empathetic.
With the translator glitched, what she was actually saying was, "You're the most empathetic person that I've ever been close friends with."
You're the most empathetic person in the room.
Yeah.
Sorry.
You're the most empathetic
translator
person that I've ever had any kind of meaningful relationship with.
You can fix almost any continuity problem by just saying translator glitch.
I didn't quite buy that they would feel like family to each other when, they worked together for 7 years on the Shinjo, and then they worked together for over a year on the Discovery, I guess. But then in the first episode of season 2, Burnham is like, "So do you have any siblings?" Like, they apparently have just now gotten to the point where they're comfortable making small talk to each other. But this is
Star Trek. Spock doesn't know about Kirk's sister and their family, So.
Picard took a long time to play poker.
Yeah.
Or Spock doesn't talk about his siblings at all.
Yeah.
There may be some downsides to the future.
Yeah.
Maybe that people are a little aloof.
Siblings don't get talked about.
If you do a study of how many Star Trek characters have lost one or more parents, it could just be that no one talks about family because it's always painful.
They're almost as bad as superheroes.
Which, in advanced technology, you wonder how they all become so much orphans. Since we don't.
Yeah, you think people would not die that
frequently. Mo technology, mo problems.
Yeah.
But yes, I think we've talked about that sometimes Discovery has had a weakness of they will shunt things along forward for plot reasons, even if it's not very organic at times. And I feel like that's a broad and reasonable complaint that people have had at times, that I've had.
I think it's just the style of this, what I keep calling the high energy, fast pace of the show, where they got to keep
no time to talk. We're moving.
Yeah, and you see an episode like this where it has so many things going on, so many sequences that a lot of them could be an episode on their own. Like when they have the relay overload in engineering, and then they have to build a lightning rod out of the gas canisters to stop the overload, and so they pull that off. But that's not even their big problem in engineering. That gets started after that when the life form escapes.
I mean, I guess that was there to indicate in order for Jet Reno and Stamets to kind of have a bonding moment where they co-MacGyvered a situation. Yeah. But it is true that sometimes they're moving so breakneck that maybe they need to give these scenes a little bit more room to breathe, almost a little Next Generation style.
And I think it's also just, I hate to be like the bitter old person that I don't think I am, but with newer TV shows that are big budget, they're flashier, so they want to try to create sequences where they can let's have some cool lightning shooting around in engineering, just make everything pop, just always have something kind of actiony and energetic going on at all times.
We talked about the influence of the Kelvin movies And certainly they've taken some good things from them, like Pike, and I think some of the energetic qualities. But it also may mean that they're a little bit a little more flashy and showy offy sometimes.
And I don't even think what they were doing with the power relay overload, I don't even think that was bad. I mean, I probably would have wanted to streamline the perils going on the ship and try to trim it down, make it more focused. But I think that might just be a personal taste thing. It's kind of weird. It's just a little bit of that, doing things a little bit differently with Discovery than they do with other Trek shows. Sometimes I love that. Sometimes it kind of weirds me out. But it's something that I am continuing to learn to get used to.
Mm-hmm.
But we talked a lot about Saru. We didn't talk hardly anything about Tilly.
Right.
So real quick, let's just go over what happened.
She was mainly tripping
Tilly.
balls.
Yeah, so she was high on mushrooms, I guess, with the kind of Venom symbiote attached to her.
Yeah. I liked at the end when Jet and Stamets were on it too, and crazy Photoshop filters or Instagram filters were going over them that were 60s LSD filters.
Yeah.
So this episode and the episode before it really set up the Tilly and May, her childhood friend, who is actually a recreation from this fungal life form, and what's going on with them, and what's going on with these fungus aliens from the mycelial network. Mm-hmm. I think we're going to see that come to a head in next week's episode.
We're also seeing them set what seems to be setting up. This is why Spore Drive isn't around in the future.
Right.
Yeah, because all you knuckleheads out there who complained about Star Trek Discovery is ruining canon, they haven't done anything that I think can't be fixed.
Yeah.
They haven't done anything that's a worse transgression than other shows. Yeah. If you disagree with me, go ahead and leave your salty comment. And that I love all the interactions I can get, so go for it. But I kind of don't want them to get rid of the Spore Drive this fast, because I think it's a cool story generator, and you can do neat stuff with it. If the show's going to be on for a few seasons, I'd like to keep it around, but if we got to get rid of it now, I guess we got to get rid of it now.
There's also an interesting thing of, what if we decide we're not going to use it because it hurts things, but then we run into a situation where we need to use it, and then we have this moral quandary, which I think opens up a lot of storytelling.
Moral quandary in Star Trek?
Yeah. I think there's a lot of energy and grist there to set up why we can't use it, and then later on we have a situation where, all right, we'll kill 50,000 mycelian, what do they call it, whatever, critters, or we'll lose the Federation and we have to choose,
But I love how Stamets, owned up to it. He didn't get, defensive or anything. He's just
Actually, for just a second, he was more worried about about Tilly, which was, I feel like a realistic, appropriate thing that he was get out of her body now. And then as soon as he kind of is oh, wait, we've been wrecking your world? Oh. Then he was immediately contrite and I'll spend my life fixing this if I have to. Yeah. Which I appreciated.
Actually, from the beginning of last episode, when Tilly's just determined to get out of her, I understood that, but I also thought, in true Star Trek fashion, why are we not asking the creature what the creature wants? That's what we always do in Star Trek. And it seemed a little hasty because you're the creature wants something. And maybe that its intentions are evil and it's just going to laugh at you and say, I want to take over your ship and conquer the universe. But maybe the creature has another motivation. And I was a little disappointed that last episode we didn't find out what the creature's motivations really were.
It was being a pretty big jerk.
Yeah, it is.
I don't want to see a ghost following me around, yelling at me help me!
Yeah, but you gotta say what you're right. Well, I don't want you following me around. So tell us what it is that you want. What is it that you want? We need to know.
It was inside her body. There was fungus growing inside her body. I can kind of see how she's.
Sounds fun.
It's sign of her right to say no, get it out of my body.
Yeah.
But it is the classic Star Trek thing. The alien shows up, raises hell. It turns out it's just got a message for us, which we got in double doses in this episode.
Yeah, so now we have this crazy thing going on with the fungal aliens, the Josep, I believe. Yeah. We also have the Red Angel, and maybe that'll tie together, maybe it won't.
I mean, they just got stopped by this sphere, and we don't know that the Red Angel directed it. Was not a burst or anything like that, right? But it was another situation where their timeliness was important, as it's been in the previous Red Burst things.
Yeah, well,
essentially a rescue of sorts.
They came across it on their way chasing Spock's warp signature.
Mm-hmm.
But Spock's
but maybe Spock, went by that thing for a reason.
Well, sounded like faith there, Fatheree. What you talking about? Everything happens for a reason.
No, maybe Spock had a motivation to go near that life form.
Yeah.
Maybe he likes to mind meld with weird things.
Yeah.
Orta's a nomad, V'ger.
If it could possibly kill him, he will mind meld with it.
Yeah.
First of all, I think that the data...
He's a mind melding slut.
I think he came up, it grabbed him, he mind melded with it, and said, I want you to watch me die. And Spock said, I got things to do, but there's somebody who will be along in just a little bit. They'll watch you die. It'll be great. Trust me. Boom, he's gone.
Probably said those exact words. I do wonder, first of all, whether all the data culled from it is going to have some insight on the red bursts.
I was wondering, that's something they could bring up at any time. They could do that in the Picard show.
Right, because they're all processing this data.
Yeah, here's something the computers have been working on for about 140 years.
Yeah.
Oh, Ambassador Picard, this is what you needed.
Yeah.
I mean, it'd be a nice tie-in. What was I going to say? I wonder if they might find some equilibrium with the spore drive, just to jump back to that for a second, where this race comes to some sort of compromise with them, and it says, hey, it's not just a never do this, but, we can help you to do it occasionally within safety limits, or even, have some weird number. I don't think they would quite do this, but it's
Can it be 47?
No, that's too many. 20 uses. 20 uses is like the max, and you can pull it out when you have to.
I would love for the number to be 47. I feel like you can use it 47 times.
Nope, that's cheesy, breaks the suspension of disbelief. Terrible. Take it away.
I doubt they'll go to the trouble of setting up a reason why we're getting rid of Spore Drive and then undermine it like that. That seemes like a whole lot of work, because then you've got to come up with a new reason to get rid of Spore Drive later on.
They are going to have to kill it off eventually, and it's something that I assumed as soon as they established this in season 1. Well, eventually they're going to have to explain why this doesn't exist anymore, and I wasn't too worried about it. But apparently a lot of people are, but I give the show a lot of credit.
I don't think writers can come up with reasons for things. How would they ever think of anything?
I give the show a lot of credit for kind of I don't want to say catering to the fan base, but for listening to things they're trying with the Klingons. We got Pike talking about get those holograms off the Enterprise. We don't do that shit on my ship.
I didn't quite catch. Did he say that the reason the Enterprise had failed was because the hologram generators, or did I misunderstand that?
I think that was his logic lead, which was a little bit much. Was it when they had the Enterprise was the only ship that had crashed when it scanned the red burst? Was that what it was?
Yeah.
And he's it's probably those holograms that we've been trying.
That every other ship has. That doesn't make any sense.
He just doesn't like them and he was looking for an excuse.
I think it was more like that, but I think they... I don't know if they wanted that to be the case or not. But in any case, they did explain why the Enterprise doesn't have holograms.
Does anyone else have anything they need to get off their chest, or can go ahead and move into Easter eggs?
I thought it was odd that they couldn't... first of all, if they have Spock's course, then they can probably extrapolate where he's going, and they don't need to keep eyes on him the whole time. And first of all, and second, even if they only know roughly where he was when he disappeared from their sensors, couldn't they, at least from Pike's perspective, spore jump to where they last saw Spock and then scan from there, and he probably will be back in range again?
I'm going to guess
and again, I'm probably micro-techno babbling, thinking about this more than I should. It's a story, but...
there's probably multiple calculations still made in warp space, and you have to avoid gravity wells and major stars and things like that, so that you can't just look at somebody where they're pointing and just go there.
So no one in Star Trek ever said faster than light, no left or right? It was a Voyager line, but
what was it? They mentioned following his warp signature on his shuttlecraft, and I wasn't sure how often that had come up as a thing. How often do people track warp signatures in
all the fucking time?
Yeah,
but do you need to know it's vibrational frequency, or can't you just scan for it? Why did they need to get that information? Why couldn't they just scan
it's the tread pattern. I mean, you'll mix it up with all the other Star Treks. These are Spock's footprints, not just anybody's footprints.
All right, fair enough. Sure,
I guess I think it's the idea. Though they also talk about how the trails disappear over time. You have to track it before it fades away.
Sometimes the story is going to need you to be able to track a ship, and sometimes the story is going to need you to not be able to track the ship.
Right.
So whenever it needs you to be able to, that's when you have the warp signature.
Yeah.
I wanted to mention that the show made 2 80s references in pop culture.
I was going to bring that up as something that kind of
What do they think they
me.
are? The Orville?
It just kind of bugged me to do like 2 like so close to each other.
Well,
in the
that
same
they ended up being basically 3 people trapped in a room who are all fans of 20th century music. That struck me as a little unlikely.
Yeah.
Any one of them would have been, or if all of the references had come from one person, that would have been fine. But all 3 of them are fans of 20th century music.
That said, it's Prince and Bowie that were the references, so I'm going to, again, give them a pass just on the quality of the choices there. Something else that struck me is when Pike decides to put the ship at risk to possibly receive the data from the sphere, he says that what does he say? Like, if half of what you said is true, then my duty and my conscience,
my oath and my conscience
require that we give this a shot. And I felt like that's some real Star Trek talk there.
Yeah, I mean, that's when you're captain of a science ship,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what you're supposed to do.
Yep. Big, bold, risk-taking things to communicate with alien life forms. That's full on Trek to me. But I think I covered most of the stuff that I want to say. Y'all, anything?
I think I said everything.
Yeah, I think I'm good.
Okay,
Let's hit it.
so we'll cut to the Easter eggs, and the one that we kind of brought up earlier was when number 1 mentions the Enterprise engineer Louvier. That Pike says the Enterprise will probably never have an engineer that loves his ship as much. So we all know that's kind of a wink and a nod at Scotty.
Yep.
Didn't bug me. It kind of felt a little bit though, like
A little meta.
Obi-Wan Kenobi saying to Anakin, "Why do I get the feeling you'll be the death of me?" And,
Yeah.
and
See, that was the best line in that movie, but for
that was a very terrible movie.
the bar was low, I'll grant you, but that was still the best line.
Chekhov being given a red shirt in the one of the
Star Trek Into
Kelvin
Darkness.
verse, yeah.
I like that though.
That's his meta. That's more meta.
We're gonna talk about that, but I mean that fit into the narrative because he was like, "I need you to be the chief engineer. Go grab a red shirt."
Yeah,
and then
but they shouldn't know that red shirt means death.
They don't know that. It was ominous because he was like, "Oh my god, I can't be chief engineer. That's so much pressure."
Yeah.
People weren't. They didn't lean into that scene a little bit for that reason.
No, like not like outside of the narrative, but within the narrative. That's the internal logic of how that scene works. We're going to talk about that this summer when we get to that movie.
All right, we'll argue about this again.
It gave Anton Yelchin one more thing to do before.
Fair enough.
Then the other Easter egg in here was number 1's clipboard pad that she has in the mess hall with Pike. How it looked a lot like the clipboards they would have in the original series, but they definitely like modernized it for a 21st century audience. And that was a very cool design. I love the like.
I didn't really notice it. Did it have like a digital readout and all that stuff?
Yeah. But the shape
was
of it,
right
the color
shape
of the thing, the location of the buttons at the top rather than at the bottom.
They do all that stuff great, like the phasers, the tricorders, the communicators.
I think the prop department really loves classic Trek.
Yeah, no, they totally do.
I know there's no doubt haters out there. No. In the Cage era, they had metal clipboards with pieces of paper and these metal lids you had to flip over because I watched the Cage recently.
But if you want to see like...
This is a perfect case of like finding that right balance.
If you want to see like pencil and paper on Star Trek, then... I don't know. I think you're kind of dumb.
Yeah.
Maybe they should enjoy
stupid.
Galactica and its octagonal papers.
Yes.
Just tell yourself that okay, and there's clips from the Menagerie or from the Cage. The Enterprise was on low power mode or whatever. That's why they were using paper. That's just not the norm. But
don't encourage him, Fatheree.
The last Easter egg that I found was when the languages are going crazy. If you're watching this with closed captions on. The captions will actually tell you what language people are speaking. So sometimes it says Russian or Mandarin or German. And there's a point where Detmer is talking and it says Andorian.
Oh.
So I believe that's the first time we've ever had canonical, out loud spoken Andorian language on Star Trek.
Never in an Enterprise, notably?
No. I mean, you might have had like a word here and there, but I don't think you ever hear like Andorian speaking.
It's pretty cool.
Lines of dialogue in their language.
Mm-hmm.
And we also have a mention of the Tal-Sadian language, how one of the displays was coming up in Tal-Sadian. We know that Tal-Ceti is a planet mentioned a lot in the original series and the Wrath of Khan and Voyager and a couple other times. So those are all the Easter eggs I found. If I missed any, please comment or tweet at us or let us know through Facebook, and we'll be sure to give you credit for it. Kind of like I'm about to do with the comment I'm about to read. This is from YouTube, from Michael Stepniak. He says, "You guys are getting to be one of my favorite after-episode discussions. 2 things I thought were kind of cool to add."
Whoa, Fatheree. Read no more.
Why do you interrupt this guy?
That first part deserves so much acknowledgement. No, thank you. It's very kind of
Thank you. Maybe he wouldn't say this if they hadn't canceled After Trek. So thank you also, CBS. But he goes on to say, 2 things I thought were kind of cool to add. Oh, by the way, he's talking about last week's episode, Point of Light.
Mm-hmm.
On the subject of the title, remember we were talking about why is this called Point of Light?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I found out why. But Michael says, Chris on Irish Trekkie had some cool ideas. He posted a link to the video. So Irish Trekkie, really cool YouTube channel. Y'all should check that out. And Chris T. Judge, the Trek Collector, does the Nerd Escape podcast with Irish Trekkie. And one of the things that Chris had mentioned on there was a point of light comes from a quote that Kahless, is something that he had said before he, in mythology, left the world, I guess before he left Kronos. Mm-hmm. He said, I promise to return one day, very like King Arthur or like Christ. Yeah. And he pointed at space and said, I'll return from that point of light. That's why they built the monastery on the planet Borath, which is where they dropped off their albino baby in that episode. Mm-hmm. But you have that point of light comes from Kahless.
Oh, interesting. So, not some Shakespearean thing.
Yeah.
Wow.
Klingon Shakespeare.
Still don't think it was a great title for an episode that was all about very motherly themes, and that something in reference to mothers would be a better title, but whatever.
Mother's Day.
Well, I would have called this one Last Contact.
That would
have had us go to Google to find out
what's an OBOL.
Yeah, what's an OBOL?
That's a really good idea. They should have done that.
Then Michael also tells us. Also, some folks are saying that one of the Klingons behind Kolshaw is wearing a House of Moog crest. It's kind of blurry, but something to watch, and it would be a cool Easter egg. I, for one, really enjoy episodes like this, where it becomes clear that Discovery isn't going to totally lose its weirdness. So yeah, Michael, 2 things there. Yeah, I love Discovery keeping some of its weirdness. I felt it kind of lost that in the episode New Eden. So yeah, I'm glad to see that Discovery is still, it's not embarrassed of its unique identity that's kind of carved for itself. It can do that and do classic, traditional Star Trek stories at the same time. Also, thank you for pointing out that Easter egg that I missed. I went back and looked at that, and I'm not 100% convinced that that's the crest of the House of Moog, but it's close enough that I'll give you that one. So good job on pointing that out to me.
It is the sort of thing the prop department would do.
Yeah, but it's just like a little. It is blurry, like he said. Like he admitted it is blurry, but it does look like it's very likely.
Which particular crest are we talking about as far as from Next Generation?
Like the triangular thing. Like if you watch the video of this after it's posted, I have like a picture of it on screen right now. So. Yeah, just a reminder that these are all going to be available on YouTube as well as audio only. So if you ever want to see some visual images of what we're talking about, be sure to check us out on the YouTubes. And like and subscribe.
For sure. Fatheree puts enough effort into finding awesome images that you owe him.
But I think that's going to wrap things up for tonight. Of course, we will be back next week to discuss the 5th episode of Season 2 of Discovery titled Saints of Imperfection.
Oh, that's an interesting title. I like that.
Very dramatic and enticing, like we like it. And, of course, if I missed any Easter eggs tonight, let me know about that. If you have any questions or comments, be sure to leave those, and we might read them in the future. And if you're noticing any continuity discrepancies this season, let me know. Or help me keep track of those. At the end of the season, I'm going to try to Marvel-style no-prize all of them and see if I can explain them all away.
Nice.
And we'll go ahead and sign off. And until next time,
Live long and prosper, y'all.
Thank all of you so much for checking out this installment of Tex-Trek. I hope you enjoyed it. Please be sure to like our YouTube videos and subscribe to our channel. Audio-only version of episodes are available at our website, www.tex-trek.com. Please check out our site, especially if you just want an audio-only podcast. We have that available for you. Y'all can also keep up with us online. You can follow us on Twitter at TXTrek, or you can check us out on Facebook at www.facebook.com/tex-trek. Please, by all means, let us know what you think by dropping a comment anywhere you see fit. We definitely want to hear your feedback. Let us know what you liked and what you would like to see more of, what you would like to see differently going forward. If you want to email me directly, go ahead. I can be reached at fathereeactual@tex-trek.com. Thank all y'all again. Take care.